Public part of the meeting, and I'd like to welcome Charmy from Great South. When you're ready, Charmy.
Kia ora. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us again. It sounds really lovely. It's a privilege to be here, and like I said, I did want to make quarterly updates. So I'm back doing the full year 23-24 update for the council. So I'll quickly go through our achievements over the year, and then I will hand over to Bobby, who will touch on some of the more prevalent stuff for the district, I think, in terms of housing and data update. And then we'll have an opportunity for questions and answers. So, our vision, as stated in our statement of intent, is even better lives through sustainable regional development. As in previous years, we've got 4 priority areas: regional development leadership, regional promotion, business support and diversification, and of course the decarbonisation work we do with businesses on their journey to net zero Southland. In 2023 and 24, we've had quite a few challenges. Great South wasn't, spared from any of the contracting economy that we all seem to be facing. So, of course, we know we had a government change last year. A lot of the government contracts ended. There was quite a bit of funding that we got during COVID and post-COVID. For the COVID recovery. So all of those have come to an end now. Even then, we did quite well, and I'm very proud of the team for what they did, what they were able to achieve. So we launched Get a Life campaign to help our attraction and retention of workforce. We updated and launched the Murihiku Southland Destination Strategy. We've had some exceptional achievements in our regional promotions, and we've made really strong progress with business and events. In 2023 summer, we saw 17 cruise ships come to the region, and there was a sizable boost to our economy from the passengers that came on shore. So that was about 40% of those passengers. And those cruise ships are not the big 3,500 to 5,000 sort of passenger big liners. These were the smaller boutique cruise ships that came through. And so a higher sort of spending capacity from those passengers. I was very proud of the team, in particular for being recognized for the 2 pieces of work that are up there. So the Beyond 2025 long-term plan for Southland was recognized by Economic Development New Zealand at their awards for the best integrated strategy. From within all of those different strategies that were put forward. And Great South's sustainability program was recognized by Business South, that represents businesses from the Lower South Island. Unfortunately, as I mentioned before, we weren't spared. We also faced economic hardship, and so therefore had to undertake a restructure of our business. The reduction in staff was equivalent to about 11 positions, and we've just had to refocus and become more targeted on our achievements for next year. So through our SOI, we had 16 KPIs. Out of that, 4 were not achieved. The 4 KPIs that we weren't able to achieve were predominantly around support that we provide for businesses, and that's through the Regional Business Partner Program and the Callaghan Innovation Program. We also work with businesses on their decarbonisation strategies. So what we saw was, because we've got a large portion of small and medium enterprises in our region, the businesses that are owner-operated focused more on their business and didn't have a lot of time or money available for external professional development. Most of the Callaghan and RBP programs that are offered here are targeting the business manager or the business owner. This is a dashboard. This is kind of like a snapshot of all of our KPIs, what our target was, what our results was, and this will come out in our annual report which we hope to publish by the 30th of September this year. So it just identifies the 4 areas that we haven't achieved. So that's with the tourism sector. We have to do the event strategy still. It's been drafted and it will be launched hopefully by November this year. The 280 business engagements, instead of 280, we were only able to achieve 250. It's about 89% of our target. The other 2 were around the decarbonisation workshops and the one-on-one meetings that generally follow those decarbonisation workshops that support businesses on their decarbonisation journey. So very quickly, beyond 2025 implementation, we had 3 KPIs. So that's developing an implementation plan, which was signed off and approved by regional leaders and MB. We had 3 key projects that we identified, and data, housing, and energy are those 3 that we've selected for this year. And Bobby will speak more about the data and housing progresses that we've made. And of course, we had certain reporting obligations to the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment that gave us the contract to and money to select 3 projects and progress them last year. Out of the 4 KPIs for attracting visitors to Southland, we've achieved all 4 of those KPIs. We've delivered 11 campaigns against our promotional campaigns, and what you see here is a partnership we did with Air New Zealand to support more people to come into our region with flights, direct flights into Invercargill. So that's the Auckland direct flight service that we were advertising. We facilitated 16 FAMILs, and FAMILs actually highlight our region to our agents, and agents then on-sell that to visitors and to other groups. So a really important part of how we promote and bring people to our region. We were tasked with increasing, 85% of our visitors to our websites were to be from key markets, and those key markets were Australia, USA, should have brought my notes, sorry. Australia, USA, China, and there was one more. So when we look at the visitation numbers, we've achieved 94% for the Southland.com, southandnz.com website and fiordland.org.nz website. We achieved our 85%. And of course, the increase, we had a target to increase our engagements across all social media sites and platforms, and the engagement increased engagement percentage was the target set was 5%, and so you can see we've had a good increase through predominantly this is through Instagram and Facebook. Tourism sector development, we had 2 KPIs. One was achieved, one wasn't achieved. And the first one that we did achieve was around the 10 projects from the Murihiku Southland Destinations Strategy that was launched last year. So 11 of those projects were progressed. We also were meant to, as I mentioned earlier, develop the business event strategy, including a feasibility of events in Gore. So this piece of work we will start this year and we will complete it this year. The event strategy is drafted, and the feasibility of business events in Gore will be undertaken and delivered before the end of next year. Next financial year, may I say, before June 30th. Right, so we've had another KPI for alternative land use, and so we were supporting 4 projects that encourage diversification, and so we looked at alternative milks, potential crops for consideration, cherries and hops, and medicinal cannabis. We also participated in a regional EDA collaborative initiative that was funded by AgMart, and we, Bobby, Steve, Kelly, and a member from Thriving Southland went up to Northland and had their visit there. We are reciprocating that hospitality, and we will have members from Northland Inc., Venture Taranaki, Venture Timaru, and of course our partners from Thriving Southland visit us in October. So it's very exciting. And that's just to share opportunities, challenges, best business practices, and just greater collaboration between the EDAs. Business engagements, again, as I mentioned before, 280 businesses was our target. We only achieved, we were only able to engage with 250 businesses, and that the feedback that we got from our businesses was because they just didn't have the time or the opportunity to engage in professional development at this point. For GORE in particular, we've had 25 business engagements here. We've had 15 business consultation meetings and close to about $28,000 in funding given to 11 GORE businesses. And that's through our RBB program. Data and dashboards. Bobby's favorite. We've got 2 KPIs there which we achieved. We designed the repository and we established the Data Insight Southland Hub, soon to be visible and available to the general public. And we've got 4 dashboards. So we've actually identified a minimum viable product. Out of that, economic dashboards, housing, tourism, and environment dashboards will be launched. Our launch date is 12th of November. So we will be sending out invitations for that soon. Carbon emissions, 3 KPIs in that, 2 of them associated with businesses and supporting them on their journey. As I mentioned before, 120 businesses was our target. We only achieved to get 44 participants in our decarbonisation workshops. And out of the one-on-one meetings, we've only had 25 of them. So it was really, really hard to get businesses to engage in that. And it was also one of the reasons why this area was looked at when we did our restructure. We do have the outreach program. However, we are now seeking external funding from companies like ICA and Tyndall Foundation to support us with any further development in that. So Great South will only deliver that program if we get external funding. The third KPI was about boiler conversion. So we had a target to convert 10 boilers, to support businesses to convert 10 boilers, and we've were able to have 11 replaced. 9 of them were through the ICA fund and 2 were through the government decarbonisation program. And that's really a really quick snapshot of Great South. So overall, pretty tough year, but good year. I think we're in a great place now to go forward. The biggest achievement for me was the ability to bring all of our shareholders together to have a shared vision for our region. We understand our opportunities. We know what our opportunities are. Regional deals, we had that conversation today. I'm not sure that that's where we want to go, but Mayor Ben Bell and the other shareholders will direct us on what we have to do there. But one thing for sure is if we want to go there, we need to get a regional spatial plan done. So a lot of conversations yet to be had around progressing that piece of work further. But as a region, when we've had ministers come down and when we've had our representatives go up to Wellington or meet with government officials and agencies, we've had a very strong, unified story to tell. We know what it is that we want to do, and we know how we want to get there. We know what our challenges are and our barriers to progress forward, and we probably do have, we do have ways on how we're going to tackle them. Some of them, I mean, of course, if we got government money, we would be able to progress them far quicker than where we are now, but you know, the lay of the land is as such that we need to be creative with what we do, what we have, and to get the best outcome for our shareholders and support the shareholders in what they want us to do. So I look forward to 24-25. It's been a really challenging year as we ended last year with the restructure. Now this year we've got a new focus. We're much more comprehensive, I think, in what we know, what we want to do. We've got key KPIs for the staff as well for each quarter. So when I come through, hopefully early next year and give you an update, there will be some good progress that we've made. So I'll hand it over to Bobby now. And unless you want to do questions now or later.
Yep. Cool. Thank you. Okay, rightio. So nice to see everybody. Thanks again for this opportunity. It's nice to actually stand up and talk about the output of something that you've created, and I'm referring to DISH, which is the Data Insights Southland Hub. So you're probably sick of me talking about it, but this is an example of how we're using the data to actually guide decision making and get consistency across lots of different areas. And today I'm just going to pull a couple of facts around housing and population for you guys. So, a couple of slides on your population, and just a little bit of a heads up, there's more to come out of government. So the way that they've staggered the release of the census information is staggered. So that has, we've just tried to manage that, and when we do get stuff, we stick it in DISH. So yes, your population is ageing, but what is interesting is that you've still got quite a bit of growth in your younger age market, that 15 to 29 age group, which is quite different to some other countries and regions where the trend is just a lot of older folk and a larger proportion of them. So I think, you're probably seeing that with schools, the provision of your facilities. You're actually catering to quite a diverse amount and type of people in your population. Your census population is 12,711, which is up from 12,396. So this is the Gore District, your TA area. In terms of your population, you have definitely become more diverse. However, it's not as diverse as the rest of Southland or New Zealand. A few things on housing. So you have 12.4% of all of the region's homes located in your area. Just under 54% are 3 bedrooms. Remember, I've talked a bit before about the implications of having a lot of our stock as 3 bedroom. And the next stat adds to that in terms of 77.1% of all of the homes were built prior to 1980. So your housing stock is actually the oldest in the region. And if you look at those stats below there, so it's 71% for Southland, a bit younger in Southland District. They've had a lot more new growth in areas like Te Anau. But when you put those two stats together, you can start to say things like, 3 out of 4 houses were built prior to 1980 and possibly 3 bedroom. So think about the type of people you're going to have in your community, and what we're seeing is actually a mismatch of the types of homes for different types of people rather than a shortage. Yeah, really interesting. Gore house prices are growing faster than New Zealand house prices, but just to put in there that has started from a lower base. So we started at a lower figure, but definitely faster growth. And if you just look at those tables there, if you want to compare it, your average house price is $420,254. So that's of July 2024. That's the lowest in the region. If you look at Southland District, which is $519,000, and Invercargill City, which is $480,000. The New Zealand figure sort of skews it because there is often that perception that we're affordable because you can sort of go, right, we could get 2 for the price of 1 in the Gore District in Southland. However, the Auckland property market skews it because it pulls it up. So it's probably not indicative of the whole of New Zealand. However, that does look affordable to people, but the next slide shows you a couple of things, and I'll talk about affordability in a minute. So you have your rental market has exploded in terms of increasing from $330 a week from July 2023 to now hitting $445 a week. So that is a really, really steep increase, and I'll show you the unaffordability slide in a moment. If you want to look at the other prices around the region, so medium is the most common price, not the average. You'll see that your $445 compares to Southland District at $500, Invercargill City at $460, and New Zealand as a whole at $600. Quite interesting. We don't know a lot of the data behind these figures, because it's, we've got a wee bit of work to do to delve in, but on the face of it, there's some really interesting things here. Yeah, so what is happening is that there is growing unaffordability, And we're seeing that in two different lots of stats. We have a way that we look at your average household income and then the amount you pay in rent, and they do a ratio to work out how affordable it is. And unfortunately, what we're seeing, you guys are the pink line on the graph there. About June 2020, you crossed over compared to other regions and became very unaffordable. And it's been quite a steep climb since then. So that is also reflected in the mortgage serviceability ratios, which is the amount of people's income that goes towards paying their mortgage, and that has dramatically increased. So it backs up the cost of living stuff that we're hearing from people, and that it is getting tougher. And yeah, you put on top of that, thinking about the age of our houses, the cost of heating, you start to get this picture how tough it is for a lot of older folk in particular. A good news story is that you guys have consistently high occupancy in your commercial accommodation. It sticks around that 62%, and it does vary across the year. But just out of interest, you've got 167 rooms in the Gore District, 160 dorm beds, and 309 camping spaces. So Great South undertakes an audit of all this stuff once a year, and we compare it across the region just so we kind of know when we promote and bring people in, we can actually clip a ticket and make them stay here and spend money. So that's really interesting because if you look, you guys are the pink line. You get a bit of seasonality. You drop a bit in January 24, which probably makes sense. Hopefully, well, retail won't like it, but you'll probably be able to see this reflected in the number of people around town. The other point to note is when you've had events, your figures have been really high, your occupancy. So it backs up again the need to have events and to make people stay longer because it does fill commercial accommodation. Just out of interest, your Airbnb rate is just over 1%. So that means about 1% of your housing stock is used for Airbnb, which is probably not far off the region. Places like Te Anau, it's 16%, or where there's tourism. So it's sort of, when I give you an average, it's probably a wee bit skewed. Okay, just a couple of slides talking about some housing projects coming up. So look, Great South has been playing more of a leadership role in housing. There hasn't been anyone coordinating it. It's not that the problems haven't been there, it's probably that the data that's been identified has identified that we just need some coordination. So the 5 things we've been doing, one is as we get a lot of new industries looking to operate in the region, renewable energy, we have been having a lot of conversations around, right, you want to come here, that's awesome. Where are your workers, where do they want to live, what type of house. So we're aggregating all that because we also create scenarios where we go, right, that means we're going to need this many houses, we know we're short. So we're trying to get ahead of it so that then housing isn't a barrier. Remember, 53% of our businesses told us that housing is a barrier for them to recruit workforce. We are very keen to support councils as they go through their process of working out where they fit in terms of housing. Some councils have some elderly housing or community housing. You guys are all regulators, but you also are enablers in terms of provision of infrastructure. So as each years go through that, we just want to support that. Advocacy, so there has been a lot happening in Wellington. So Kāinga Ora, which is the state agency which provides housing, has been reviewed. We haven't got a clear position on a lot of the government housing at the moment. That's due to come, but there are projects like Growing for Housing, Ready for Growth, which we make sure that we get Southland's voice in there, because at the moment there's not too much support, to be honest. Dish, so obviously we're going to have the data dashboard. We'll make sure that's accessible. We'll probably give you guys reports on a regular basis with your housing. We've yet to go through that process to see what you need, but that's the whole point. And the last point was the Housing Action Plan. And that was just to say there is so much you can do with housing. Where do you actually start? Like, where do you put your energy if you don't have much resource? So 13 actions come out of that, and Great South is able to deliver 4 of them in the next 10 months. So last slide, one of the big projects which we're really pleased to be able to support Gore District Council with is looking at some feedback that we got from the Beyond 25 process, where developers said, look, it's really hard to operate in Southland, it's quite confusing, we think some of the rules aren't that enabling, and actually the processes to find out about it could be improved. So the councils have asked Great South to manage a project where we want to work with the councils to say, right, how does your system work? You know, because a lot of the councils already realise this, which is awesome, but then to actually go through a customer journey mapping process with customers to actually see what that's like from that angle. And I just want to say, look, it's been a really positive process because everybody has been open to it. Everybody wants to be the most efficient and use resources the best they can, and everybody's seeking improvement. So it hasn't been, we've encountered no resistance, and I think it's going to be really good for the outcomes we're going to get. So that will be finished by middle of November. That is funded with support of Kāinga Ora, Great South and Community Trust South. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bobby and Charmy, for that presentation. How you keep all that information in your head, Bobby, I never know. It's so insightful every time you get to speak. And thank you for your honesty, Charmy, around the KPIs that you have and haven't achieved this year. Councillors, I'll open the floor up for questions on both presentations. So there's a lot of digesting going on in the room. I'll kick us off. Just with the, this one's directed at Charmy, just with the Gore feasibility study for events, why wasn't that able to be achieved in this financial year?
The whole process about business events took a little bit longer than what we anticipated, Mayor Ben. So it was put there as a action, but we just couldn't complete it within the time frame that had been allocated. So our apologies for that, and it is top priority for us now.
Thank you for that. And just around the R&D coming out of Callaghan Innovation, is that led by Coin? Just that 27,000 seems quite low in terms of that R&D. Are we seeing a reduction in the amount of innovation happening in the district and more so the region?
No, so this is just from the RBP and Callaghan funds that Great South manage, nothing to do with Coin. So they probably have a separate set. I don't have the figures for what they do. Out of the Callaghan Innovation, it was 10,400 to one business, and I think there was about 17,000 to another 10 businesses from the RBP program. So RBP generally is about $1,700 on average per business, and the Callaghan one is the big one. But you have to have some serious, you have to meet some serious criteria to get into that. And we fed back to the ministry, actually, to MB, that this is probably not fit for purpose. They've looked at Callaghan Innovation. They restructured it in the middle of last year. They looked at RBP. RBP contracts are up for renewal, and the minister, Andrew Bailey, who's due to be down south here, I think in 2 weeks. So we've been having discussions with him about how we could probably improve it. The criteria is like, you know, it's one size fits all, whereas we know one size doesn't fit all. Our region, like regional businesses, have unique sort of needs that are not necessarily addressed or cannot be addressed through the criteria that they've wrapped around the funding. So we want to make those changes now. Well, we'll advocate for those changes.
Cool, thank you for that, Charmy. Councillor Fraser.
Thank you, Your Worship. Charmy, this is more for you, and it's just an extension of what Ben was saying before. I think it was in your 2020 or Beyond 2025 document, and you talked about events in Southland, and when I read it, it only mentioned Invercargill events. So when you're sitting in a town like Gore, you think, why are we even here? We have some major events that have here, and then I look at this, and the underachieved is Gore. So, you know, we're not the major shareholder, I appreciate that, but we are putting money into this organisation, and we are expecting results. And when I see things like that, I'm going, why?
I take that on board. I can only apologise because it wasn't able to be finished. This team have been given a directive. This is priority now, and we need to up what we do for Gore. There's a lot more interaction and a lot more use. What's the right word? Sensible use of time and resources and efforts to get a better outcome for Gore. And I appreciate that what we have done hasn't met the mark for the council, and I do apologise. But we have put some remedial actions so that it doesn't get repeated.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Worship. Just a question for Bobby. Are you able to promote our Kianga Ora development in East Gore that's been put on hold? You'll be able to push that with the Minister for us?
Yes, absolutely. So you'll be aware that any housing beyond 2025 has been put on hold. So that's while the government undertakes that process. So there's actually 6 houses that will be built in Southland between now and the end of 2025, which is not great when you think we've got Southland District Council, for example, is the second worst invested region for social housing in the country. However, we've got an excellent relationship with Kāinga Ora. They've been very supportive, if you can see from some of these projects. So that advocacy, you know, I think the relationship with them will actually help get, you know, Hamilton East in their thinking as well. Oh, East Gore, sorry. East Gore, Hamilton Street. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Just to probably put some more around that, and I think I've discussed this with councillors in the past, but more so for the public, I believe that's still going through resource consent. So depending on how that plays out, if it is to go ahead, then I think there will be some advocacy on the council's part to try and get that over the line. Anything that, what is it, keys in the hands by end of 25, and I think with Hamilton Street, it's start of 26 that they were predicting that would be finished. So there might be some advocacy there from this council to try and get that over the line, assuming that it makes it through the right steps it needs to in the meantime. Councillor Richard McFarlane.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Just a couple of queries to Bobby. And you talked about the housing, our residential housing, ageing housing, the fact that we've got 1% is Airbnb, and you sort of indicated there's some interesting crunching that's going to come out of that. So do we hear about that in November, or when do we get the crunching? Because I'd like to know, like, how many rental properties do we actually have in Gore that are, does that come out of our dish? Like, because you clearly said we've got a high rental for our ageing house population, but we're also lower than the region, with the lowest probably rental in the region, other than probably when you balance it across Mataura and Gore. But we will be providing housing to the Southern District. We'll have workers that are living in our town going out. So I'm interested to see where you're going to go with that and what you're actually going to tell us about any further than that. Is there some opportunities there, or is there something we should be looking at? We know we haven't got emergency housing, even though we've got projects underway. But yeah, when does that come out in the wash?
Yeah, so through the chair, yeah, really good questions. And I think we've been working with Debbie and the team to just consolidate our housing approach alongside the councils, because you guys are actually doing a lot of work as well. So maybe in the future we come back and give you a little bit more detailed analysis, you know, and then line it up with what the council's doing as well, so you can kind of see. All good? Yeah, one thing I'd probably add is the long-term rental statistics are really difficult. So when we did Beyond 25, from memory, 32% of all of housing stock in the country is long-term rentals, and Southland's figure was 16%. And it did vary across different townships. But the other point I want to make is you're absolutely right. What happens in other councils impacts your council. And we're possibly seeing the overflow both ways, like I'm just sort of guessing, because as there are shortages or people don't get the type of house they want somewhere, they will travel. So that supports the regional spatial planning approach, but also then the provision of key infrastructure like roads, you know, to then connect communities up. So all the stuff, it's this bigger picture that is happening as well. Is that okay? Yep.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions? Councillor Gardine?
Just, we've been noticing in the last few years our statistics on visitors to our region or the Gore district is quite skewed because of the influence of people coming from either Southland or Clutha and doing business here. And it comes across in the statistics as being not as business, but as the wrong, you know, like the petrol sales, probably in groceries and hospitality. A lot of that is just business as per usual, not influenced by the hospitality. So is there any sort of, I think it's skewed with the 40k figure. Any house that is 40 k's from its centre is excluded is called a visitor.
Yeah, another really good point. It's like you're just picking up the things I struggled with during the development of DISH. No, it's a good point because it skews the information. So the definition of a domestic visitor, because also a lot of people commute, thinking of that regional spatial planning. So the way that tourism is measured within government is inconsistent because the categories they have don't fit. So it actually crosses over. So tourism can be a bit of hospitality, you know, a bit of accommodation, like retail, it all counts. So on DISH, we've had to be very careful with how we present that. But at the same time, everything that is presented is clearly referenced. So you kind of know whatever stat you use, you can tell exactly where it's come from.
Thank you, Councillor. Good point. Any further discussion? I guess just highlighting as well, Bobby, a recent meeting that we've both been in around the data that's coming out of some of the social ministries that's being developed in a similar tool that will be able to be integrated as well. Obviously that won't be in the first version, but something in the new year, no doubt.
Yes, Your Worship. So the Social Investment Office, which was the old Public Service Commissioner at Ministry of Social Development, they have developed an awesome tool which aggregates a whole lot of different ministries' data, and it's down to what we call SA3 level, which is townships, which is awesome. So that will be available in the next couple of weeks. The difference is that that is just government data, whereas DISH has other data from other sources. So QV data, for example, it's got the Milford Sound cruise visitors, it's got people going to Sturt Island through the visitor levy, but we will align them because we don't have that level of detail, and it's just so cool to have these things coming out. The key is to make it easy for people to find them because it's going to be like lots of stuff. Where do you go? One-stop shop will be DISH.
Great time to be a data nerd, isn't it? Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thanks. Hi, Bobby. Look, one question when you're looking at the housing area, I've noticed a lot in the last 5 years of, because I guess with the ageing population, but there are an awful lot of lifelong renters, and particularly women on their own now, elderly women, who have no access to good, stable housing, and renting is just getting out of their comfort zone to pay for it. They just can't do it. So I think when you're talking to ministers and things too, we need to be pushing that sort of aspect that it's not just families, much and all I know they need it as well, but there are a lot of people out in our community that are really struggling to find single accommodation. I don't know what you do about that, but I guess you'll know what to tap.
Yeah, no, thanks, Councillor Reid, and the data definitely supports that. We've been working with Age Concern and some others around that, and this is why housing's so complex, because it's from executive housing, you know, through to increasing homelessness, because that unaffordability, like that's hard for a lot of families and a lot of people at different circumstances in their lives. So your approach has to incorporate it's homes, not houses, you know, and it's changes. So you've got to make sure you look at it as an asset, but also the people that live in it.
Thank you, Councillor, and just touch on some of the campaigning that Mayor Clark has been doing as well in Invercargill is around trying to encourage those 2-bedroom units, those smaller units, so that older people can move out of their 3-4-bedroom homes that were built in the 1980s and move into these smaller units that they don't have to really maintain, and can pick up for a lot cheaper than what they sell their house for.
Problem with that for Gore is that we do not have, like in Invercargill, the ability for people to go into council housing. We used to, but we don't any longer, and it's actually a different dynamic, really. We're looking at people that probably are just living on the pension with a little income, so, and they do need the 2-bedroom or even single units. But you can only usually find those in Gore at retirement villages, and that housing's just out of their reach.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further discussion? I think might let these guys off. Thank you very much. There's no recommendation here. Do we want one? No, we're all good. And we will move on to... Thank you very much for your presentation, ladies. It was excellent. We will now move on to the in-committee part of the evening.